When I think virtual reality, I think gaming. And that's truly because my experience has been limited to a handful of times when my brother has come over, he's brought his VR goggles, and I've spent the night pretending to be on a roller coaster or playing Wii tennis. But recently, I've come across someone who is using virtual reality in a completely different way, and I'm so keen to find out more. Hello and welcome. My name is Abi Gatling, and I'm on a journey to uncover how everyday people find inspiration, get inventive, and open their imagination. Basically, I want to know how people find creative solutions and then how they use that at home, at work, at play, and everything in between. And my goal for this podcast is that by the end of it, you'll be armed with a whole suite of tried and tested ways to summon creativity the next time that you need it. So today I'm speaking with Benjamin Breitenstein from Composit Design. Welcome to Creativity Uncovered.
Thank you for having me. I
Yeah.
love talking about this stuff.
Oh, good. Yeah, I know. I mean, we met a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, before I jump off the phone, will you be on my podcast? Because I have so many questions.
Cool.
So I'm glad that
Hit
we're
me.
here. I'm so keen to talk all things virtual reality because,
Hmm.
it is this emerging space. It's only going to get bigger from here. And
For
I want to
sure.
find out about, your creative process and the applications because it does go so much further than just gaming. But
Hmm.
before we jump into all of that, this is a very specialized area and you're doing a very specific type of it in this area. So I want to kind of know
Mm.
how have you ended up here? Like what have been the steps for you to get to this place?
Yeah, definitely not intentional. Definitely fell into it sideways. So I worked as an industrial designer for a long time. That's what I wanted to do in high school. And so I did that. I got my degree and I worked in a product design studio doing furniture and lighting for a long time. And the link to VR, I guess, is that anyone who's doing any sort of product design these days is spending a lot of time using 3D CAD software. So, I was using it so much, I was dreaming about it basically. And then a friend of mine, when I guess the current wave of VR tech was coming into fruition around 2012, between like sort of 2012, 2014. It was around 2015. He's like, dude, you got to come and check this out. I've just got this new VR headset. And I was super dismissive of it, as a lot of people were. I didn't really know what it was about. But we shared a jam room together. He and I, we sort of wasted our youth playing in bands. So we had this shed and he brought his rig to the shed one night. And, after 20 minutes in there shooting robots and stuff in this VR headset, I was like, God damn, this is so much better than I was expecting. And that's the reaction that most people have. It really is pretty transformative media. And it's one of those things that's so hard to describe. But, when you try it, it's so hard to, yeah, describe the feeling. And you've tried it, and it's interesting that you mentioned the roller coaster example because the whole like early VR roller coaster sims have a lot to answer for because they were sort of a pretty early implementation of this tech and made a lot of people sick. And so a lot of people have this lingering doubt about how it works and how it makes you feel.
Oh, do you mean like motion sickness or?
Yeah, motion sickness. Yeah, 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 for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so my brother brought these over and we were all taking turns doing it. And I found it hard to kind of like get into it. Like I couldn't,
Yeah.
I was still very aware. I was sitting in the lounge room and I could hear people. And so
Mm.
I wasn't kind of fully immersed in it. But then when I was watching other people doing it, like my mother almost fell off her chair. She was like,
Yes.
wow, and I was
Yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah.
there's clearly there's different reactions to different people.
Yeah, and there's different what we call modes. So depending on which headset you're using, they can handle motion and rotation in different ways. And so there can be different levels of comfort, if you like, depending on the specific tech that you're actually using, without, going down the whole rabbit hole of the different headsets and stuff like that. But generally speaking, now that we're sort of a decade on from those early examples, the fidelity and the comfort is like so far high and above, what we had early on. And it's the whole comfort thing is less of an issue. And I would back that up by saying that a lot of the people that I would have expected to have hangups about it, especially people who are a bit older, when they try it now, they're like, oh, wow, this is actually really smooth, really comfortable. It's not making me nauseous. And with things like hand tracking, you don't have to spend the first 10 minutes explaining what all 6 of the buttons do and how to access them and that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's come a long way, and it's only getting better and better.
Yeah. So what was it when you tried it on? What was it that kind of captured your interest that made you like did you then decide to go down that as your career path or like what happened
Yeah,
there?
good question. Yeah, sorry, I did kind of trail off there, didn't I, with that original question? It felt like a waking dream. That's how I describe it.
Hmm.
So I have this really, really distinct feeling of, so I'd been in this experience for the first time, and then I take the headset off, and the feeling wasn't, oh, I'm coming back to reality. It's, oh, I'm transitioning from one experience of reality to a different experience of reality. And they felt equally plausible in a weird way. And that just turned my head inside out. And I was like, I want more of this. And as for how I got into it, so because I had this background in 3D modeling, it was kind of a fairly easy sideways step to then, because like when you're dealing with CAD, you're dealing with spatial design, and that's what virtual reality is. It's spatial design. You're figuring out how people interact with things in 3D, and I guess the core ideas around how you design something for a person so they can use it and that it's nice to use and that it feels good. All that theory translates really well to VR because you're doing the same thing. You want people to be able to interpret and understand the VR world that you're designing for them swiftly and easily. It's really easy to make somebody feel like an idiot if you design something poorly. And it's never the user's fault, right? So, I just kind of took all of that knowledge and instead of using it to build furniture and lighting, I was just doing it in a game engine and pushing out my products, if you like, to the headsets and putting people in it and letting them experience them that way.
Right. So you design in 3D and then now you're designing virtual reality and you're saying it's kind of the same?
There's a big overlap.
Yeah.
Well, that's how it feels for me. I mean, I've kind of always felt like there are aspects of creativity that translate to any discipline. So like I mentioned that I played in bands forever. Like that's a great space to get used to working with people and dealing with personalities and all that sort of stuff. And all of that translates to working in a company where you're working with other designers in a team and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it felt like the biggest hurdle was just understanding the software, the game engine software and what all the buttons do. It can feel a bit like flying a jet. There's so many thousands of dialogues and buttons and things like that. But little by little, I sort of figured out what each button does.
Yeah. Yeah, so it is built within this gaming engine. So it is, I mean, it has its roots in gaming, right?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, all the tech is born from gaming.
That's
So some people call them serious games. It's kind of a shorthand for VR experiences that aren't necessarily for entertainment. So, I got my start doing training simulations for an energy company. So they wanted something where they could simulate real world safety scenarios where there were hazards and you had to identify the hazards. And so how we approached that was trying to make the game world as sort of interactive as possible so that as somebody's navigating through these hazards, so it might be like working at heights, you have to put your harness on and then clip onto something to make sure if you fall off the scaffold, you don't die. VR is cool because you can translate that into a very realistic one is to one experience where you grab the harness, you put the harness on, you grab the clip, you clip onto the safety rail, which is a lot more compelling than doing like a multiple choice questionnaire in a PowerPoint. You know what I mean? So you can see how trades and critical infrastructure companies are jumping onto this sort of training because basically employees love doing it, and
Mm.
the knowledge retention is like sky high compared to what I would call abstract tests.
Yes. Yeah. I guess also like way less safety risk if they're
Yeah,
trying
well, exactly.
out.
Yeah, and it's repeatable.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I suppose that's really interesting. So it's started with gaming, it's now become serious games.
Yeah,
Going
yeah, yeah,
into training, and I saw that you've also done things like Crocs virtual try-on.
yeah.
I'm just so
So
curious, like that. How do businesses come up with the idea of being like, okay, I think we could have some virtual reality here, like, or is this something that, like, how does that come about? Because I think you have to be quite a forward-thinking business to go, this is what we're going to invest our money in.
yeah, so we got lucky with that one because we got approached by a company that does point of sale displays. So their specialty, it's a company called Fusion, and they work with a bunch of big brands to basically do the window front displays and the shop displays for all sorts of in-person retail shops and stuff like that. And so I think they had, I don't know if it was through Foot Locker or or through Crocs directly, but they basically pitched the idea of doing something a bit different. I think they'd seen probably an Instagram story somewhere of this virtual try-on stuff. So there's a company based in Cyprus called 010 who kind of developed what I think is the best in class version of this virtual try-on tech. And so we basically worked with 010 to sort of to build up this kiosk using their body tracking tech to create this virtual mirror. So it's a pretty simple hardware setup. It's just an iPhone plugged into a computer, and plugged into a giant screen that is your mirror, so to speak. And the camera just sees you and it knows where your feet are, and then it just renders the shoes on your feet as you walk past it. And you kind of see yourself standing there wearing these Crocs, and it's like really convincing.
That's crazy. And it seems like I
Yeah.
mean, quite a collaborative industry. You know, if you're able to use the technology that this, other people have developed. Like, how does that work out?
Yeah, we just reached out to them because, I mean, it wouldn't have been impossible for us to develop it ourselves, but it just it made way more sense to just use their existing solution. They've spent so much effort fine tuning it. And beyond that, it was just the interface that they had created was really smooth, really flawless. So you could actually select different colors or different models on a little iPad that's sitting there. And then it had like a photo booth integration so people could create shareable content. And so yeah, it made sense to just contract them in to do it basically. Like I still handled all the stuff on the ground, building it up, supplying all the hardware and implementing it. And we also did all of the 3D asset creation. So we actually created scans of the shoes and some other cool 3D visuals like animations and stuff that would fly in when you kind of were introduced to the product, just to give it a bit more pizzazz. Um,
Yeah, that's
so yeah, we didn't just kind of phone it in, you know.
oh no. No, I think it's just I love it when there's certain industries that are really collaborative like that, and there's other ones that are
Mm,
just so I don't know. They shield what they do and they don't want to share it around, but it actually seems
yes.
like this is an industry there where people are like, let if we all kind of work together with this technology is going to get better and better and better.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean that's always the way there. You're right. Some companies are open, some are closed. But yeah, whenever there's some sort of open solution, it's always nice to be able to tinker under the hood and understand how it works.
Yeah. When, after the last time we spoke, I was sort of thinking about virtual reality and how actually it is good for unlocking experiences that would otherwise be inaccessible to people. You know,
Mm.
say for example, you're rural, regional
Hmm.
Australia, and you can't come into a Croc store and try.
Yeah.
You want to test it out. But the things that you're doing, that people are physically there and they're also experiencing this virtual reality experience. Like, what is the additional benefit of having that when you're actually already there in person? Because it seems it's obviously triggering something else in the buying process.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there is definitely a sense of novelty, and that goes a long way. It's bragging rights, no one else is doing this.
Yeah.
It's weirdly satisfying. So it's like, but the truth is that even though that was a site-specific kiosk installation, that same tech could be used to run the same thing on your phone. So you could just point your phone at your feet and be like, oh, I'm wearing the Crocs, which, you know, makes a lot of sense because the Crocs then come to you. You don't have to go to the store. But yeah, I mean, I guess I couldn't tell you how they justified it to Crocs. All I know is how it works.
Yeah, yeah. That's cool. I mean, you sort of spoke before about, designing for humans or, with humans in mind. So it sounds like there's like a bit of kind of psychology in that, right?
Yeah, oh, for sure, absolutely. Yeah, there's heaps of psychology in user-centered design, and I really like. I'm fascinated by behavioral economics. So I don't know if you've ever heard of Rory Sutherland. He's like old school advertising guru, and he goes hard on behavioral economics, and he's written a couple of books, and he's on 1,000 podcasts, and he's just a fascinating guy to listen to. But he just talks about how perception is everything. You can create value from thin air if people perceive your product correctly.
Yeah.
So,
I suppose like that's how they justify it to Crocs.
well, yeah, I mean, there's other things going on there too, but yeah, that was in the lead up to Christmas too. So everyone's trying to stand out from the next brand over, and I think Nike had a similar site-specific installation where they had like a rally car in the mall or something like that. It was like, completely different approach.
Yeah.
They probably spent twice as much.
So where's the line between virtual reality and augmented reality, which, so many people have had experience through like TikTok and stuff like that. Like
Hmm.
where do those intersect or are they completely separate?
No, it's a good question. So it all uses similar tech, but basically virtual reality you can define as shutting the real world out and going into a fully synthetic environment. So in the case of a VR headset, you're putting on the headset, you can't see the outside world. You're just enjoying whatever game or movie or experience that you're experiencing. It could be, something that we do is virtual showrooms for like building product supply companies. But basically, yeah, VR is a fully synthetic reality. Now, where that sort of overlaps with augmented reality is the newer headsets have cameras on the front. So you can actually then turn on what we call pass through. So you can see around you. But what that then enables you to do is to overlay virtual objects that are tracked in real world space over the vision that you're seeing of your real world surroundings. So that's
Mm.
what we call mixed reality
Ooh.
because it's still a fully synthetic visual that you're getting. It's basically a composited image of, camera footage with virtual objects overlaid, and then the headset has some smarts in there that's basically figuring out where you are in real world space, and it's giving you the illusion that this virtual thing is sitting on the table, even though it's not. And then you have what's called augmented reality, which is where, like if you've seen any of there's companies that are making augmented reality glasses where you're looking at the real world, just like I'm looking at you through my glasses, but there's some little screens in the lenses that are then overlaying digital objects over the real vision. So
Mm.
that's essentially what we call augmented reality because you're taking real reality, and you're just augmenting it. You're just adding another layer over what's really there.
Mm.
And then you've got like phone-based augmented reality, which is where you're using the phone camera, to point it might be like a Snapchat filter, where you see your face and you're compositing something over the top.
Mm.
So that's kind of the distinctions. And then the kind of catch-all term, which most people aren't really that familiar with, is what we call XR, which is shorthand for extended reality. And that's just an umbrella for all of this stuff.
That's so interesting. I think like a lot of people would have had experience with that augmented reality, but don't realize
Yeah,
that.
it's been around for a long time now.
Yeah, yeah. Like I remember those, was it like 2020, the little flower crowns and stuff like that on
Yes.
TikTok and the dog face and all whatever.
Yeah, that's it. Totally.
Yeah. But now it's actually useful.
Yeah, and that's a good example that you bring up, because that what enables those face filters and stuff, that same tech stack, if you like, is what we use now to drive facial animations for our characters in the experiences that we build. So if you put on the VR headset and you go into a training simulation, and then somebody walks up to you and comes to explain something, and they're like a game character, we can actually record the audio and all of the facial movements using an iPhone, and use that to drive the animations, instead of having to then, hand animate a character to look like they're talking. And it's all based on the same smarts in your smartphone that drive things like filters in Snapchat or whatever.
Yeah. It's amazing how it's so technical, but then you're also using like everyday items like iPhones.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's just simply the fact that they're so powerful now. They just every year they come out with more and more powerful features. Like this, has a LiDAR scan built into it, which means if I want, I can make a 3D model of my whole house just by walking around pointing my phone at the walls. It's crazy.
Mm. I can see that this would be super useful for people who find it hard to imagine things. Like, for example, at the moment,
Yeah.
my husband and I were planning this renovation, and I'm very visual, so I can kind of imagine like we need a window there. I think we need a fan here, and he's just like, I can't imagine what you're talking about right now.
Yeah, right.
I can't see it. I think it would be so cool if it was like we somehow had this model
Yeah.
of our house, and it'd be like, okay, now look over there. Can't you see that?
Yeah.
Great place for a
100%.
window.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And one of the earliest industries to uptake on this tech is like architects and interior designers for that exact purpose.
Yeah. And so I was looking at your the information that you sent through prior to this, and I saw a little line in your bio that said you make virtual reality experiences that make looking at a 2D screen feel like reading Latin off a stone tablet.
Yeah.
I found that
Well,
so
that
funny. So
well, look, that's I'm trying to describe that feeling of like once you've tried it, it's so hard to go back. Like playing games in VR has like ruined desktop gaming for me. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Because let me put it this way. Call of Duty, right? It's a game that's hugely successful all over the world. And when you look at the visuals on screen, it's the chaos of warfare. It's like it's so hectic. The players are running at 1,000 miles an hour. And yet, if you were to look back at yourself playing the game, you're sitting there dead still and you're just clicking a mouse and moving the mouse around, right? Whereas like to have that same experience in VR, it's like you're up, you're about, you're crouching down to hide, you're reloading your weapon, you're doing all of this stuff, and it's just so much more engaging, to the point where then when you go back to playing something where all you're doing is like clicking four buttons on a keyboard, it just feels kind of ridiculous.
yeah. Like, is that a risk? Is that we were just going to get so used to it that you know industries are going to have to come along because once you've experienced it with one business, you're like, oh, you look like you're in the Stone Age. To someone else who hasn't done it.
Yeah. No, that's a good question. Like I think there will be a tipping point where businesses who could benefit from this tech, who aren't yet doing it, are going to get pulled into doing it because they're going to get left behind. In the same way that I mean, the iPhone is a great example of a similar shift where before the iPhone, everyone looked at the internet on a browser on their desktop. And at some point, every company had to have a mobile friendly website. And so, this being the next medium, people are starting to try to figure out how do you bring the experience of the internet to a headset? What is that, a browser? Is it something else? Is that the metaverse? This is what people are trying to figure out. And
Mm.
this is the big play that Meta is making at the moment. They want to be in at the ground with this stuff because they kind of got locked out with the iPhone because they don't have a hardware product that they could sell to rival this, right? So
Mm.
they're at the behest of whatever controls that Apple puts on them, and they don't like that. So their big play is that's why they've got the best consumer VR headsets at the moment because they want to be the ones controlling the hardware and the software because they want to own the metaverse,
Mm. Well, I
which
mean,
is valid. It's totally valid, I think.
yeah. Well, that's it. Like if you're not in charge, then you can't control what's happening. You're the boss
Hmm.
of everyone else. But like, what is happening with Meta though? Because there was a big name change. They announced that they were doing all this stuff, but maybe I'm just not up to date with it. But like, what are they actually doing in that space?
Yeah, so they have the best hardware, I think.
Mm.
It's a really powerful headset that's very cheap. It works great. They're constantly updating it, which is great and terrible.
Mm.
Nice that we're getting new features, but hard to keep up with the changes as a developer. So that's good and
Yeah.
bad. And they, they started with gaming, which is interesting because if you look at what Apple have done with their headset, they've definitely tried to come at it from a productivity standard point of view.
Mm.
What Apple did by comparison is essentially try and create a headset that was like using a MacBook Pro, but on your face, rather than trying to sell it as a gaming console, which is what Meta kind of did to start with. But over the last probably 2 years, Meta have really started to drive a wedge in on that productivity market, if you like. So there are more functions and products available to people now to use the Meta Quest 3, for example, as like a replacement for your monitors, essentially.
Oh,
So, now it works with Windows quite well. You can basically chuck the headset on, and any app that you have running on your computer, you can pop up on a display in your headset, which is pretty cool.
yeah.
And it's legitimately, I wouldn't say useful, but it's a legitimate use case. You could actually use a headset as a replacement for your monitor if you wanted to. There
Mm.
might be a few pain points here and there, but it's coming along. And then they've done other things like another big push of theirs at the moment is they're kind of trying to recreate Roblox, but their own version of it. So
Oh,
user generated worlds, essentially. And one of the really fascinating things they've done is what was a VR only experience now runs on desktop and mobile, which is going to be a huge net to capture more and more users
yeah.
because that barrier to entry of not having a VR headset is now no longer there. So
Oh,
you can actually build, fun little experiences, VR experiences that you can jump into on your headset, just like you always could. But now you can ping a mate and say, hey, come and run around this pirate ship with me. And they can do it on their phone, just like they could with something like Fortnite or Roblox or something like that.
yeah. Wow.
So yeah, they want a slice of that pie.
Yes, interesting. So
Mm.
what does the future of VR look like for businesses now? What do you think? Or where are you heading with your business in this area?
I think that the sort of commerce and retail side of things is really underserved. I think businesses are starting to wake up to that a little bit. At least the ones that I talk to, they seem to be seeing the value of it beyond just the novelty of like it being a new thing. So one example would be like this lighting company that I'm working with. They sell really big commercial lights, like stuff that's so big that you can't throw it in the back of your car to take to a meeting to show a client.
Yeah.
So let's just say they have 10 products and they're all lights that are as big as a person. We've built them a virtual showroom where they can just take the headset, which fits in a backpack. They can put their clients in there and say, hey, have a look at this light in a real space or a very realistic looking space. They can pick it up, they can inspect it, they can shrink it down, they can look at the details, they can change the colors, and they can present these products in a way that's so much more compelling than just rocking up with an iPad. And I met with them recently, and one of their newest staff members said to me, and this was like, it sounds scripted, but I promise you it's not. She said, I took this job because when I heard that they were using VR to show off products, I was like instantly in because for the life of me, I couldn't stand doing another PowerPoint presentation. And I was like, well, that's great to hear because that's exactly what we're trying to do.
Yeah. You need to take that person with you to like all your pictures from now on.
Yeah. Well, I managed to get it on camera too. So
Nice.
that'll be going on LinkedIn somewhere soon.
Yeah, that's so cool. Well, thank you so much for discussing all of that with me.
No problem.
Yeah, I really appreciate hearing more about it. And thank you so much to everyone who's tuned into Creativity Uncovered. By listening, you're helping us make the world just that a little bit more creative. And of course, if you know anyone who would benefit from listening to this episode, please share it around. More the merrier. Until next time, take care. If you've made it this far, a huge thank you for your support and tuning into today's episode. Creativity Uncovered has been lovingly recorded on the land of the Cubby Cubby people, and we pay our respect to elders past, present, and emerging. This podcast has been produced by my amazing team here at Crisp Communications, and the music you just heard was composed by James Gatling. If you liked this episode, please do share it around and help us on our mission to unlock more creativity in this world. You can also hit subscribe so you don't miss out on any new episode releases.